Well, hello and welcome to another guest interview here on the Profit with Law podcast. I'm your host, Moshe Amsel, and today I have a unique individual, somebody who's going to be talking about a topic that maybe we might have discussed it here on the podcast, but we certainly didn't discuss it in this way. We didn't call it this terminology. So it's going to be something new. And as soon as you hear that, your ears perk up. Don't worry. If you're out for a run, if you're driving, whatever you're doing, this is just going to be something that you can listen to and enjoy. And if we have anything that we need to refer you to, any websites or anything that you need to come back to, we've got you covered. It'll be in the show notes of this page, which can be found at profitwithlaw.com. It can also be found in most podcast players right in the description of the episode. So we got you covered there. Now, my guest today is Stephan Wiedner. He is the CEO of Zarango and a psychological safety expert. Now, let's see. His career is focused on developing sustainable, high-performance leaders, teams, and organizations. His passion for unleashing the collective potential of people has led him to co-found newme.com, the web's largest network of independent life coaches, skillsetter.com, the deliberate practice platform for interpersonal skills, and zarango.com, the psychological safety training experts. Stephan is married with 2 children and enjoys spending quality time in the outdoors, hiking, biking, camping, and reading. Stephan, welcome to the show.
Moshe, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's my absolute pleasure, and I really appreciate you being kind enough to give your time with our audience. I always start with the same thing with every guest. Our audience doesn't know who you are. They want to get to know you. So give us a little bit of the backstory. Doesn't necessarily have to be career related, but paint the picture of who is Stephan and how did we get to this conversation?
Yeah, well, I guess you touched on it a little bit in the introduction, and it's a bit of a mouthful with all of the 3 different companies and websites that we have. But I'll go back to my early career coming out of university. I got a job working in a construction management firm, and it was a small little operation. We did really specialized work with large organizations, and I loved it, and yet I was fairly ambivalent about the work. So it was in the construction field. At the height of my career there, I was flying down to Carson City, Nevada, and we were building a brand new hospital there, and I was spending a week of my time, and I was dealing with 50 different trades on the site, and found myself sitting in boardrooms frequently with 50, 60-year-old engineers, architects, etc., and sitting and going, this is not where I want to be 20, 30 years from now. So I had a significant shift in my career and got introduced to the concept of coaching, got trained, and then I started up newme.com with my business partner, and we've been on this path ever since. And really the kernel of origin, I guess you can say, was back in my schooling days, when I studied business, and the courses that were most interesting to me were those in psychology and organizational behavior. That was where my interest in this kind of work really started and blossomed. And I knew I needed to make a career shift at that point in time to work more with the messiness of people than with bricks and mortar.
So it's very interesting because my career path also had a pivotal moment, pivotal change, where it was just this like come to Jesus moment where I was like, whoa, wait a second, I'm on the wrong path. I'm doing something that is not lighting me up. I might be really good at it, but it's just not where I want to be. And I see that you had the same thing, and clearly you realigned with what you're passionate about and what motivates you and drives you. And now you're a trailblazer in this area. So I want to jump right into what it is that you do. And the first thing is there's a terminology that I'm not familiar with, and therefore I have to assume that there's a lot of people who are listening to this who are also not familiar with it as well. And that's this psychological, I got to pull it up, psychological safety expert. So what is psychological safety? Explain that to me. I know that when when we started talking before we got on here, it became clear to me that this is going to be very pivotal for people who have a staff and they're looking to build their team. And so, folks, even if you don't have staff yet, that that's where you're headed. That if you want to succeed in the business of law, you're going to have to hire people. And if you have staff, you want them to be pulling in the same direction. So what is psychological safety, and what does that have to do with team building and effective team building?
Yeah, a lot to unpack there. So let's start with the definition. I'll use the definition provided by Amy C. Edmondson. So she's a Harvard professor. She's been researching psychological safety for 25 years, and she's really the trailblazer, the thought leader, if you will, in the space. And her definition is that psychological safety is a belief that within your team, within your work environment, you can speak up, you can say what's on your mind, you can even admit mistakes when they happen. And you can do all of that without the fear of reprimand or the fear that what you say will be held against you in some sort of capacity. It doesn't mean you're going to get fired, but maybe someone's just going to think you're an idiot, or there's some sort of social consequence that you're concerned about, and therefore rather than speak up, you just bite your tongue, you just say nothing. So that's the definition of psychological safety. And the working definition that we use in our work is that it's the courage to speak up and the confidence to know that when you do speak up, you'll be heard, you'll be listened to. So that's the definition. Now you're probably wondering, well, so what? Like, why is that so critical? Why is it important if you're considering growing your business and having a successful organization? And the reason is that psychological safety has been linked to high performance. So Google probably did the most important study. They did their own independent study to ask the question, what makes an effective team? And they had 180 teams at the time. They ranked them all. They knew the best teams and they knew all the worst teams. And Google, being the data-driven beast that they are, looked at 250 different factors. So they went around the organization, they asked people, what makes an effective team? And people made all sorts of suggestions and they had all sorts of hypotheses. Well, they looked at all the data and nothing correlated. So then they had to go back to the drawing board and scratch their heads and go, well, what the heck is really underlying the performance here? And that's when they came across the concept of psychological safety in Amy Edmondson's work. So they then applied that, they looked at the data again through the lens of psychological safety, and lo and behold, it was the number one factor for high performance teams. So this idea that within a team, people can speak up and say what's on their mind is really, really critical. And my understanding for why that's so critical is because I don't know if you're familiar with the term culture eats strategy for breakfast.
No, I haven't heard that, but I really like it.
Yeah. So I'm in a CEO roundtable, and we're often reminded of that. So culture eats strategy for breakfast. And why is that? Well, because if you have a really great strategy and a bad culture, it's going to be hard to execute. Whereas if you have a really strong culture and a bad strategy, the culture is going to figure out what the good strategy is. And so you want to have people be able to voice their concerns, express their frustrations, point out that, hey, I think we're going in the wrong direction, because it allows you to adjust. A simpler way of saying it is having more full information makes for better decision making.
Yeah, I think that by allowing people to express their opinion, to feel comfortable expressing their opinion, to feel comfortable asking questions, not worrying about asking the stupid questions, you're also preparing them for bigger and better things within the team. So my friend Molly McGrath, who from Hiring and Empowering Solutions, is all about team building and setting up that relationship correctly. And she has this term that I don't know if they made it up, but basically she calls it an intrapreneur. You want somebody on your team who's going to be acting like the entrepreneur, that's going to be making decisions for you, that's going to, and that they're making the decisions you would be making. And when you start having people like that, now they're not waiting for every single thing for you to be the one to make a decision on. And I feel like this is the stepping stone to having entrepreneurs on your team, is giving them a voice and letting them know that their opinion is valuable. And even if we don't go in the direction that you're bringing up or suggesting, we're still going to evaluate it. We're going to look at it. We're going to give it the time of day to see if this is, this is a good thing for us to investigate or do. So I can see how that this is, translates into a stronger team, a better team, more effective team. And the flip side is, we can also envision what it might look like if you shut people down and you don't give them their time of day, and when they have ideas, you brush it off or you ignore it. They're only going to offer those a few times, and then they're going to learn, oh, this is a bad thing. This is something I'm not supposed to share. I'm not supposed to do. And now you're creating a team of people who are just doing what you want them to do. And there's no creativity. You're losing the ability of having a whole bunch of minds who each thinks differently to come up with different ideas of how you can be successful. You're losing all of that. And it's going to slow down your progress, and it's going to cause you to take a lot longer, if not be unsuccessful in what you're trying to achieve. So I really see the value in this. So let's start unpacking like some of the how-tos or some of the, like what do I do? Somebody's listening to this, they're like, this all sounds great, right? But I've been trying to get my team to be involved for, and I'm trying to create a culture like this. Like, I naturally know that I need to do this. But I can't get them to speak up. I can't get them to voice their opinion. Like, I have these team meetings and I ask them, what's your opinion? What's your opinion? And everyone's just silent. So how do you foster this? How do you get them to start participating in the conversation?
That's a really great question. And of course, I think the approach might be different for different cultures, because like you said, I'm asking them to speak up and people aren't sharing their ideas. Well, there might be a number of root causes there, but one really good suggestion that I've seen work in numerous scenarios is, if you really want to embrace and welcome input from folks, is you need to make sure you set the stage properly for them. And a really good way of doing that is, if you want their specific input, is you ask them in advance. Give folks the time to think about it and ask them to write down their answers. Then you can come together in a group setting and ask people, okay, what did you think? And they've written something down, and you tend to get a lot more equal sharing at that point in time. Because if you're putting people on the spot, there's always that kid, that was at the front of the classroom, oh, pick me, right? Little Johnny at the front row is always going to fill the space. So what you want to be able to do is create an environment where there's equal amounts of sharing and communicating. And so once you can start to do that, more and more the norms will start to be created where people will gain a little more comfort, recognizing that their input matters, especially if you don't just ask them for their input and then, write a few notes and throw it in the trash. You need to take action. You need to demonstrate that you're actually listening and that you're curious about their answers. So if they say something and you're not clear on what it is that they're trying to get across, you get really curious with them so that you make sure you understand. You don't have to agree with them, but make sure you understand. And then you show that there's an action plan thereafter. Is that, how does that sound as a first step?
Yeah, it's very helpful. But it now, like what the natural progression of our conversation is, now I'm starting to wonder, okay, so what if there's people who just are not going to participate, right? They're like, there's certain personalities, because you gave the example of Johnny in the front of the room, but there's also the kid in the back of the room who, even when the teacher asks them, they're like, I just not going to have an answer for you. I'm just not going to participate. And that doesn't mean that you're doing something wrong with your culture or your environment. It just means that there are different people act in different ways. Is there some sort of evaluation or assessment that you can do to try to figure out who are the players that I need to try to encourage to speak up, and who are the ones that I should leave alone because I'm making them uncomfortable?
It's a good question. The way we look at that problem is we look at it through the eyes of the manager or the leader. And we focus on developing interpersonal skills for that individual to be able to uncover those, the ideas and the suggestions that people possess, even for those who are most resistant, or maybe resistant is the wrong word, but those folks that, even when they have good ideas, are going to be super hesitant because of their socialization or their upbringing. And yet I think there's a skill there to be able to ask questions in a way, and really, in a way, put people on the spot without putting them on the spot, if you will, to have them elicit the ideas and the concepts that are in their heads. So that's our approach to it. And we know that the best managers are really able to do that on a very consistent basis again and again and again. So I think you pointed to that earlier on, where there's this collection of interactions that really sums up your culture. It's not just one event, it's every day. It's every moment, every email, every Slack message. The degree to which someone feels safe to speak up is a sum total of all of those interactions that happened in the past. And so the more you can kind of reinforce and engage people again and again and again, the more safe and willing they will get over time. So this is a marathon, it's not a sprint. And it's not like psychological safety is something you buy it and you can now put it on the shelf and say, hey, we've got that.
Right.
It's something that needs to be worked on all the time.
Yeah, I think really now that I'm forming this opinion, this understanding of what psychological safety is and how valuable it can be in the organization. Now I want to go back to the beginning of our conversation, start again, right? Like, okay, so I buy into this concept. I understand what psychological safety is, and I recognize how valuable it can be for me to have a culture that embraces that in my organization. As the leader, what's the step-by-step process for me to learn it, get good at it, be that manager that can encourage people in that way? What are the tactics to applaud people when they do get involved, and to encourage people to get involved? Like what is the step-by-step process that somebody should take to say, okay, we're doing this. My law firm is going to be the top in psychological safety, because that's what's going to make my team beat out any other team out there. And that's the name of the game for me to be successful, is to have the best team in the world.
I would start with the strategic planning and overall the definition of your organization, what you're up to, what your mission is, because it really ultimately comes down to your core values. And are you, as the CEO or the managing partner or whatever your title is, the individual at the top of that organization, are you committing to this concept of, not necessarily, you might not describe it as we're going to have a psychologically safe work environment, but maybe you describe it as we want to have the best place to work. We want to win the best place to work award in all of the state or all of the city or all of the country, whatever that title is. And then look closely at your core values, because the values are basically the actions that you're wanting to aspire to have. So if one of your core values is all about diversity, let's say, well, how are you acting on that core value? And that's where you want to be looking as the leader. You want to, set the goal. So draw a line in the sand. We are going to be a great place to work. We're going to be a place where people can speak up and listen. And then how are you going to act on that and define those core values and model those behaviors? That would be the number one strategy that I would advise leaders and organizations to do.
Now, best place to work is there's a psychological side of it. Like, I feel safe, I feel comfortable, I feel loved, I feel wanted. Like, that's one component of it. But the other component of it might be something that many small business owners have a hard time doing, like unlimited time off, or a game room where you can come and take a break and play for an hour. Like some of the crazy things that we hear about these places that are winning these awards or getting, And maybe it's just a change of your mindset and your thinking, and really anybody can afford it, but it almost feels like it's like a benefits package that really is costly, and you kind of need to be in a place where you're able to implement that. Am I overthinking where you were going with that, or and if not, then how does somebody approach this when they feel like, hey, I may not be there yet?
Yeah. Well, look, I think that's a good objection, or rather, consideration there. I put it this way: nobody wants to go to work to play ping pong. What they want to do is go to work and feel like they're part of something bigger, something bigger than themselves, and they're contributing, and they know how they're contributing. And so I think that's far more important than, having kegs of beer and and ping pong or lounge chairs. And so it's the way you engage your staff and have them be involved in those decisions about, well, we have a little bit, this year, hey, guess what? We made a little bit of money, not a lot. We're not like swimming in a river of money yet. And yet we can still do things for the organization, for the team, and how should we spend these dollars? And, if you put it out to your staff, maybe they say, you know what? We don't need any of those things. Let's put all that money back into our marketing and our sales so that we can grow the company. Because you know what? It'd be nice to have some of those things, but it's not priority right now. It's not. So that I think it's more important that you involve your team in those discussions than having those things.
Yeah, it's very interesting that you share that, because and I'll go back to my friend Molly, because whenever we're talking about team building, she comes up. One of the things that she shared on the very first interview that we had with her on the podcast, and folks will link that up in the show notes. One of the things that she shared with us is that she had a client who, they wanted to meet certain goals with the team, and they wanted to incentivize the team, and they were thinking, oh, we need to give this large bonus, or something really, really big. And she said, well, why don't you just ask them what they want instead of trying to guess what they want? And what was crazy is that when her client had a conversation with the team, what they came to find out was that the staff wanted to get out halfway through the day on Fridays in the summer. Like, that was their big thing that they wanted. And that was it. I mean, it didn't technically cost anything to do that. It did cost some hours, but how productive are they on a Friday afternoon in the summer anyway? So when they actually hit the goals, that was the reward. And and it opens your mind to realize that, like, we always walk around with these assumptions of what people want, what motivates them, and we should always involve them in that process, and ask them what would be meaningful. It's amazing how much more valuable time might be to them than money, or things like that, and or even recognition over any of those things, right? Like, how much would somebody just love to be, hey, the employee of the month, and highlighted for what they've done and their actions. Okay, so Stephan, this is it's very eye-opening. It's it's a wonderful concept, and clearly this is an area of expertise for you. So how do you help organizations with implementing this, and how can somebody take the next steps with you if that's something that they're buying into?
Well, I was really drawn to the concept of psychological safety, firstly, because it can be measured. So even though it's measuring something that feels or seems amorphous, you can measure it and you can get an absolute number, a score out of 100. And so the first thing that we would advocate doing in any organization is we got to get a baseline. We got to know where we're starting from. And so let's measure the psychological safety of your senior leadership team or your entire organization, depending on the size, right? If it's not overwhelming numbers, then it's great to be able to measure the psychological safety across the organization. Now, it is a team-based construct. So generally what we like to do, sure, we can measure it across an organization, but you want to also be asking how people are feeling psychologically safe within their team, within the environment that they would on a day-to-day basis mostly work in. And if you check in with yourself, you'll notice that you've probably been on numerous teams in your life, and maybe even on numerous teams right now. You might be part of, a R&D team, but also part of some other team. And your experience of psychological safety will be different on those two teams. And that's very common. So we would first measure it, and then we debrief those results. We want to have a discussion with the organization, with the team members, and say, okay, here's what we found. Maybe the average score is, say, 75 out of 100, which is not bad, but the range is really high. So we have a handful of people at 100% and a handful of people at 50%. That's a lot different than if everybody answers the questions in a way that everybody's feeling like their average score is 75. So we want to debrief those results, have an understanding of why people are feeling psychologically safe or not, and then that opens up an opportunity to create a strategy around how to build psychological safety. What does this organization need? With the folks that rated the score lowest, what do they need to bring them up? And then we can start to build a plan from there.
Now, the score obviously consists of the answers from multiple questions. Can you determine from which questions they answered that are bringing the score down as to where the work is needed? Like if a bunch of the 50s are answering the same questions to bring that score down, then that kind of tells you that this is an area to focus on, right?
Yeah. And we do break down the overall psychological safety score into 4 subdimensions. So that really helps us. Like, for example, diversity and inclusion is one of the 4 dimensions. So we might, if that's the lowest score, we might look there and say, okay, people are not feeling like their unique talents and skills are valued within this organization. So what can we do to recognize people for their differences, for recognizing people that, hey, that person's really good at crunching numbers. Why aren't we getting them to do more of that data analysis, whatever is needed in the organization, right? Let's give them that side project, even though their primary task might be something else. So that's gives us a little more granularity as to what direction we need to really head to improve psychological safety.
Now, is there a minimum size team that you got to have X number of people before you start worrying about this, or is this really for anybody who's got employees, period?
It's really for anybody. I mean, you can start out with you and a co-founder kind of thing, just 2 of you. And hopefully in that situation, psychological safety is going to be a high, and anything thereafter, right? 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, anything above 2, really.
How often are you measuring results? I mean, like, let's say we're actually actively trying to fix this. It's not going to change overnight, but we're going to be doing these little things here and there to try to elevate that score. Are we checking it quarterly? Are we checking it annually? Like what's a good time frame for giving this to work and then seeing how we doing?
Yeah. So first of all, the psychological safety assessment we use is 7 questions. So it's not onerous. It takes 3 minutes. And it's you're not going to see meaningful change within a month or 6 weeks. I mean, you can, events can change significantly, and the cadence we generally recommend is roughly every quarter. Often we're working with leadership teams or management teams or executive teams, whatever their label is. And so they're generally going to be meeting every quarter anyway to do planning, quarterly planning, annual planning, that kind of thing. And we bring it in at the beginning. It's the way we set the stage for effective planning. Is let's start with psychological safety, because if you've got a bunch of executives sitting in a room and if they're not feeling psychologically safe, you might as well stop there and fix that problem before starting to get into planning, because people are going to be withholding information. People are going to be afraid to ask the really good questions. And that's just not a good place to be starting when you're trying to build a plan for the coming quarter or coming year or the coming 5 to 10 years.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Stephen, this has been a great conversation, and I really enjoyed. I mean, it's a wonderful concept and idea. Is this evaluation or assessment something that my listeners can access? And if so, then where do they go to get it?
Yeah, I'd love to work with your listeners. If you're interested, if you're a team member, or if you're a team leader, or you run the show, please reach out. The website URL is Zarango, ZARANGO.com/free PSI. PSI stands for Psychological Safety Index. So I'm offering to all of the listeners here today to have an assessment completed by your team, by your organization, and then we'll debrief those results, and then we'll take it from there. So all of that offering to all your listeners, and I'd love to connect with you folks who are interested in bringing psychological safety into their organizations.
Awesome. I love it. Folks, we're going to link that up in the show notes for you. Now, I like to close the show out with one final question for you. And that is, what is one, if you could leave one parting piece of advice, one piece of wisdom that somebody should be able to take from this conversation and take with them that would be relevant to all of our listeners, what would that be?
So the very first piece of advice I would say for anybody who's interested in this topic is to do nothing except stick out your antenna and start paying attention to what might be causing psychological safety to be reduced in yourself and in the people in your organization. So the next time you're in a meeting, just start to observe the dynamics that are happening and what might be causing one or more of the people to be withholding information. And when I say withholding information, I don't want to imply that people are like actively trying to withhold information. They're just not sharing, right? They're just not necessarily saying what's on their mind for a variety of reasons. And that's where I'd like you to go to work, is just start noticing the psychological safety in the organization today, right now.
Awesome. Love that. Thank you, Stephan, for your time and sharing with us today. This has been a great conversation, very enlightening to me. And so I'm sure it's been to our listeners as well. A new terminology to wrap our minds around, but you got the PSI you can take with your team and see where you're at, see where you stand, and how much work you have to do to incorporate the right culture in your environment to allow people to feel safe, to be themselves, and to participate in a way that's really going to move your team forward and your business forward in a way that may perhaps you haven't been experiencing up until now. Really excited about this concept and what it can do for you. If this is your first time listening to the podcast, then you want to make sure you hit the subscribe button, and this way you get notified every time your podcast player sees a new episode from us, which is every Thursday. We release new episodes, and sometimes we have some extra ones thrown in there, so pay close attention. And if this is not your first time, we'd love it if you came back and checked us out again on the next episode. It's been a great conversation, and we have amazing guest experts coming every single week and sharing with you some incredible value, just like Stephan did today. So really appreciate you, the listener, checking the show out. And if you have a friend, another law firm owner, an attorney, or even a manager of a firm that would get value from this episode, please share it with them. That's really how we spread the word about the podcast and the good stuff that we're doing here. So if each of you listening went and shared this with somebody, that would be massively impactful for the work that we're doing here to be able to reach more people and get this into more hands. That's it, folks. Enjoy your weekend, and we will catch you next week. Take care.